my mind that, I thought that was a dead philosophy, but it's alive and well in a lot of our educational institutions.
Hola a todos y bienvenidos una vez más a este episodio de Informe Orwell. Hoy quería mostrarles, Elon Musk ayer brindó un meeting en Pensilvania, que es básicamente el swing state más importante, o es el estado más importante en todas las elecciones de Estados Unidos. ¿Y por qué es Pensilvania? Bueno, por lo general en Estados Unidos las encuestas, y tradicionalmente hay ciertos estados que tienden a votar por los demócratas y hay ciertos estados que tienden a votar por los republicanos. En el caso de Pensilvania, en esta elección, bueno, históricamente Pensilvania ha sido un swing state en las últimas décadas y particularmente en esta elección parece que todo se va a terminar decidiendo en Pensilvania. Es decir, según un estudio reciente, si Kamala Harris pierde en Pensilvania, solamente tiene un 6% de probabilidades de ganar las elecciones. Es decir, que básicamente podríamos asegurar que si Donald Trump gana en Pensilvania, Donald Trump será el próximo presidente de Estados Unidos. Entonces, Elon Musk lleva un par de días haciendo mítines en Pensilvania. Trump también ha estado en Pensilvania varias veces y es el estado donde se está poniendo la mayor fuerza de campaña electoral. Y ayer Elon Musk brindó allí un discurso ante cientos o miles de seguidores del candidato republicano y empezó a exponer sus ideas y básicamente explicar por qué era su cambio tan disruptivo de postura, porque se había convertido en alguien, vamos a decir, políticamente activo y pues básicamente pues, relata lo que obviamente muchos de nosotros hemos visto durante muchos años, pero algunos americanos no habían visto. Y es súper importante que lo haya visto Elon Musk porque Elon Musk va a hacer que millones de estadounidenses más también lo vean. Y aquí particularmente les voy a mostrar varios cortes del video, es decir, varios cortes de toda su intervención, que fue bastante larga, que me parecen bastante importantes. Pero voy a empezar cuando él habla de el comunismo, la intromisión del comunismo en Estados Unidos a través de las escuelas de élite.
I thought that was a dead philosophy, but it's alive and well in a lot of our educational institutions. I think part of it is that you've got a lot of colleges with these giant endowments that insulate them from reality. So you can sort of have this fake communist utopia at a university because they don't have any feedback loop to reality because they got these giant endowments and a ton of government funding too. So that allows them to be disconnected from the realities of the free market. They take advantage of the free market, but they live in a sort of pseudo-communist world in a lot of these colleges. So they just don't get it. But it is remarkable, and there are a lot of memes about this because how often do we need to run this experiment? It should be very obvious that the economic structure, the economic philosophy that is the good one is the one that does not need to build walls to keep people in. So it's pretty North Korea it builds a wall to keep people in. East Germany had to build walls to stop people from going to West Germany. The Berlin Wall was built by East Berlin, not West Berlin. So the philosophy that has to build a wall to keep people in, that's the bad one, okay? I don't know how it's so obvious. And yet you see a resurgence of it over and over.
Y sí, particularmente para los que no lo sabían, Elon Musk se peleó con uno de sus hijos y básicamente eso fue un poco lo que hace que él tenga ese awakening político porque uno de sus hijos, según él mismo afirma, fue brainwash, es decir, le lavaron el cerebro en las escuelas de California y decidió cambiarse de género. Elon Musk no estuvo de acuerdo al respecto y su hijo básicamente le dejó de hablar. Entonces eso fue algo que a él realmente le marcó y básicamente algo que hizo que él se volviera, vamos a decir, políticamente más activo. Pero eso se lo voy a mostrar más adelante. Quiero seguir con el tema comunismo en Estados Unidos, aunque evidentemente esto va un poco por parte de esa misma agenda de guerra cultural en Estados Unidos, pero lo que menciona Musk sobre la deuda en Estados Unidos y cómo el sistema se ha roto y se ha corrompido es sumamente importante. Y es importante que finalmente los estadounidenses y los contribuyentes y todos los actores políticos entiendan y se hagan cargo de la economía. Muchos suelen pensar que el dinero cae del cielo, que se puede imprimir infinitamente y que eso no va a tener consecuencias para la población. Es completamente falso y Elon Musk lo explica.
And with the Department of Government Efficiency, with Donald Trump's policies, do you think we can reduce the U.S. national debt that's currently at under $36 trillion? And part B,
Yeah.
is that after you do it?
We have to.
Yeah.
Like, if we don't do something about the debt, it's going to, like, this is like, for some reason, you know, just the legacy of mainstream media just ignores the fact that America is going bankrupt like crazy. It's like at a rate that is unprecedented. And the reality is that all government spending is taxation. So people think, well, there's government spending and taxation are somehow separate, but they're not. All government spending is taxation because the deficit is what results in inflation. And inflation is a de facto tax because it causes all prices to rise and makes people trying to just live their lives have a lot of difficulty. But inflation throughout history has been used as a pernicious tax because it's like it's 1 degree removed, so people don't feel it directly. They sort of, and then the politicians will try to blame it on something else, but it's all about government spending. Government spending is what drives inflation. So the key is we've got to reduce the government spending, and if we don't, we're going to go bankrupt as a country. End of story. Just like a person. You know, if a person spends beyond their means, they go bankrupt. And we're spending beyond our means, and we're spending on like silly stuff that doesn't actually benefit the public.
Correct.
Ahora bien, el marxismo cultural, el socialismo, el comunismo, el progresismo, como también lo llaman, o como lo querramos llamar, evidentemente ha ido sufriendo muchísimas transmutaciones a lo largo de las últimas décadas. Hace 100 años probablemente pues, el espectro de la izquierda solía identificarse abiertamente como comunista sin ningún problema. Cuando el comunismo fracasó por completo, mató de hambre a millones de personas, entonces dijeron, no, bueno, ya no somos comunistas, ahora somos socialistas. Y cuando el socialismo también fracasó, y cuando el socialismo también dio muestras de terminar en lo mismo, en miseria, en pobreza, en hambre, en corrupción y en dictaduras, como ha sucedido recientemente en Venezuela, en Cuba, en otros países, entonces cambiaron el nombre, ahora es progresismo, que es básicamente los mismos postulados, pero ellos los pintan con un aroma democrático. Pero finalmente, vamos a decir que termina básicamente en lo mismo, si se les permite, evidentemente, y claro está. Y pues Elon Musk explica también cómo todo este nuevo sistema económico que los progresistas, es decir, los antiguos socialistas, intentan montar es básicamente un sistema repleto de altos impuestos en los que básicamente el Estado controla la mayor parte de la economía, pero que ganan los empresarios o trabajadores de una economía, y evidentemente también empiezan a ahogar por completo a los empresarios con regulaciones completamente absurdas. Y aquí hay una pequeña historia que cuenta Elon sobre cómo para uno de los lanzamientos de SpaceX el gobierno le estaba pidiendo primero que hiciera un estudio sobre el impacto en los tiburones, y una vez que él entregó los resultados sobre el impacto sobre los tiburones, le dijeron que tenía que hacerlo sobre las ballenas. Bueno, los dejo que usted mismo los vea.
I mean, I got a bunch of sort of nutty stories, you know. Some of them are, I guess, kind of funny. There's, you know, we had to do this. SpaceX had to do the study to see if Starship would hit a shark. And I'm like, it's a big ocean, you know. There's a lot of sharks. It's not impossible, but it's very unlikely. And said, well, you have to, you know, this is, I think, from National Marine Fisheries, one of the, you know, NIMF it's called. You know, they were like, well, you have to do the study on whether you can hit a shark. We're like, what? And then we said, okay, fine, we'll do the analysis. And then, well, can you give us the shark data? They're like, no, we can't give you the shark data. We're like, okay, well, then we're in a bit of a quandary. how do we solve this this shock probability issue? And they said, well, we could give it to our Western division, but we don't trust them. And I'm like, am I in a comedy sketch here? And they're worried about the shock density data, like the people who hunt sharks for shark fins somehow getting their hands on this the shock data. And so eventually, I think we got the data, and we could run the analysis to say, like, yeah, the sharks are going to be fine. But they wouldn't let us proceed with launch until we did this crazy shark data. And then we thought, okay, now we're done. And they said, but what about whales? I'm like, when you look at a picture of the Pacific, what percentage of the surface area of the Pacific do you see as whale? Because look at a picture, I don't see any, it's like, you can't, where's a whale? And honestly, if the ship did hit a whale, it's like, honestly, that whale had it coming, because it's like the odds are so low. It's like Final Destination, the whale edition. It's like fate had it in for that whale, and so we have to do the whale analysis. And it's like, okay, yeah, the whales will be fine too, It goes on. And then there's like, well, what if the rocket goes underwater, then explodes, and then the whales have hearing damage? Like, this is real. This is actually, and we're like, look, if we could make a rocket go underwater and be a submarine, that would be like a feat of physics we could not accomplish, okay? This is not how it works. So anyway, just one like crazy thing after another where, so this is why I'm like really feeling the pain of the overregulation. And there's like multiple federal agencies that have overlapping, they're all doing the same thing, basically. So anyway, we got to stop this madness because we just won't be able to get anything done.
Y ahora, ok, esta fue otra parte que me pareció sumamente importante. Es decir, todas estas pequeñas anécdotas creo que son importantes para que la gente vaya entendiendo en qué se va transformando el monstruo del gobierno y cómo empieza a limitar por completo la innovación y el crecimiento económico. Eso es sumamente importante que la gente lo entienda, y una anécdota como esta es bien importante. Ahora vamos de vuelta a lo que mencionábamos al principio sobre lo que habla Elon Musk de lo que pasó con su hijo. No lo hice abiertamente en este meeting, ya lo mencionaba en el pasado en otras entrevistas, pero pues básicamente hablando del tema de cómo hoy en día los demócratas intentan impulsar la ideología de género o la ideología trans y empiezan a decir a cualquier niño que está confundido que probablemente es porque nació en el género equivocado. Algo que nosotros sabemos que no es verdad. Pero en fin, se ha construido toda esta dinámica, y esto yo ya lo he expuesto en algunos de mis libros. En El hombre jugando a ser Dios hice un apartado bastante grande sobre esto, hablando de cómo para los progresistas o los socialistas es importante destruir el núcleo familiar. Porque cuando se destruye el núcleo familiar, fíjense lo que pasó con Elon Musk y su hijo, entonces tú vas a tener a una persona que, número uno, se va a victimizar por siempre. Número dos, va a tener una persona que no tiene ese apoyo emocional gigante que ofrecen las familias y los amigos, etc. Y número tres, rompiendo ese vínculo familiar, lo único que te queda es el Estado. Entonces, básicamente, el Estado se convierte en el padre de las personas, de alguna manera. El padre que te va a proteger de todos los males. Y eso crea una serie de incentivos y una cadena irrompible que, pues, básicamente termina por alimentar más y más la maquinaria electoral, donde una persona se convierte en socialista y vota por socialista el resto de su vida porque básicamente cree que no puede valerse por sí mismo. Miren lo que dice Musk.
What I think, I mean, what I see is that there's like a tremendous amount of propaganda being pushed on kids in schools, and I think it's just messing with kids' heads, I mean, anyone that goes through puberty, it's going to be an identity crisis, going through puberty, like, it's normal kind of to have an identity crisis, really. And I think we should tell kids, like, yeah, if you're confused, that's okay. It's like it's coming of age, we shouldn't like steer them in a particular direction or convince them of something that they're not. it's okay to go through an identity crisis. Everyone does. But I think what I see in schools is that they tend to send kids down paths that they wouldn't actually go down because they're being pushed down that way by the teachers, and by the propaganda that's pushed in the schools. So I think we need to tell kids it's okay to live with uncertainty, that it's normal to have uncertainty, and it'll settle down over time, and and don't make any permanent decisions. Like decisions that can't be reversed can't be reversed. So I think we definitely should not have any sort of sterilization of kids, below 18. That's no good. There's an age of consent for a reason. And we don't let kids get tattoos until they're 18, and we don't, alcohol is technically illegal until 21, although that's often, observed in the breach. But we just want people to not make decisions when they're young that make them unhappy as an adult. That's really what it comes down to. And I think you want to say we want to optimize for people's long-term happiness. But that means like making sure, like I said, that there are no irreversible changes during a kid when a kid has an identity crisis, which every kid has, and that's totally cool. And so my opinion is we should just tell kids when they're going through puberty and an identity crisis, that's totally normal, and don't get too stressed about it. And things will settle out how they settle out, and that's the right thing to do.
Por último, en este episodio les quiero mostrar, digamos, la explicación que da Elon Musk también al tema de por qué se vuelve un poco más vocal. Explica cómo toda esta maquinaria del Deep State en Estados Unidos básicamente apoya a que el Estado crezca cada vez más, el gobierno crezca cada vez más burocracia, cada vez más impuestos y cada vez más salarios en personas que en su gran mayoría no aportan absolutamente nada a la economía ni para el bienestar de los estadounidenses, y es una maquinaria que crece y crece y se sigue reproduciendo. Y cómo el gobierno, particularmente el demócrata, ha utilizado a los medios de comunicación afines y a los periodistas a su alrededor para tratar de censurar y silenciar a todo intento de disidencia y oposición, y cómo están confabulados en contra de la primera enmienda de la Constitución de Estados Unidos, la más importante de todas, el libre discurso.
When the Biden puppet was not working out, they sort of got a new puppet, but it's still the same machine, obviously, and it's extremely undemocratic what was done. It's bizarre and hypocritical to claim that Trump is somehow a danger to democracy when what happened with Biden being removed as the candidate was incredibly undemocratic. Yeah. So it doesn't make sense. But there's clearly a strong push for censorship under the guise of fighting disinformation. But really, disinformation is a propaganda word. It's not well, who's going to decide what's disinformation? The government? That's crazy, So that's yeah. So I think we'll see. This is like this is why we have this petition in support of freedom of speech and right to bear arms. Is that it's under siege. It's being attacked. But really, we should have the free marketplace of ideas. People can propose an idea. They can, the people can discuss an idea, and they can make a statement. People can rebut that. You can have, this sort of, the people can decide. And I think it's far better for information to sort of bubble up from the voice of the people than to be decided by a handful of editors-in-chiefs of newspapers. You know, that's, yeah. I mean, the sort of, the biggest point of manipulation that occurs in the media is not when the media says something that's false or misleading, but because they do that, but their choice of narrative. What are they going to talk about? Is that's by choosing to focus on one thing and not focus on another thing, that they're sort of steering what information the public receives. Whereas I think the right thing is that the narratives that are important should be the narratives that the people as a whole think are important, not what a few media oligarchs think is important. So, yeah. But they sure like controlling information. So I think if the Kamala machine wins, then we'll see. I think severe censorship is what's going to happen, and that's why I think this is the last election. Yeah. Some exposure to government spending because SpaceX does have a lot of government contracts. There's a lot of work for NASA and for DoD, Intel, and whatnot. And so I've actually seen just the level of waste that happens. And if you talk to people in the government, they actually agree. Yes, this is very wasteful and inefficient. And I'm like, well, why don't we do something about it? But really, in order to do something about it, it has to be a mandate from the top. And if the president is, if we have a great president like Donald Trump, who's willing to make major changes, and it's difficult because the system will fight you. The system is not going to be like, oh yeah, no, totally, we're totally happy being smaller. that will not be, like the sort of antibody reaction of the system will be quite severe. I don't think it's going to be, they're not going to, like it, basically. But you have to have that mandate from the president. And we need a real president, not a puppet, The thing that scares the system, that scares the machine, is that Donald Trump is not a puppet. He's a real person, and he's not beholden to anyone. And that's why you see sort of, that they're trying to kill him,
Bien, esto fue todo. Espero que les haya gustado el video de hoy. Los invito a que se suscriban a nuestro canal y que interactúen y nos ayuden a compartir nuestro contenido. Muchas gracias.